Have you ever checked your blood sugar first thing in the morning and thought, how could it be this high? I haven't eaten anything all night. Maybe your reading was actually lower when you went to bed, but somehow it has risen while you were asleep. It can feel confusing, frustrating, and a little unfair. But there is a reason this happens. And no, it does not necessarily mean that you ate something wrong the night before. One of the most common explanations is something called the dawn phenomenon. So let's break down what is actually happening. Even when we are asleep and not eating, our body still needs energy. Our brain, organs and muscles do not simply switch off overnight. To keep everything running, the liver stores glucose and releases some of it back into the bloodstream when the body needs it. Then, during the early hours of the morning, the body starts preparing us to wake up. Hormones such as cortisol, glucagon, adrenaline, and growth hormone begin to rise. These hormones send a message to the liver that says, "We are waking up soon, give us some energy." The liver responds by releasing more glucose into the bloodstream. This is a normal process. It happens to people without diabetes as well. The difference is that in someone who is insulin sensitive, the body releases enough insulin to move that extra glucose out of the blood and into the cells. So the rise may be small and temporary. But with insulin resistance, prediabetes or type 2 diabetes, insulin may not work as effectively. The liver still releases the glucose, but the body struggles to clear it from the bloodstream. That means your morning blood sugar can be higher even though you have not eaten anything. This early morning rise is known as the dawn phenomenon, and it commonly happens during the hours leading up to waking. Some people also notice that their blood sugar rises even more once they physically get out of bed. You might wake up with one reading, then test again 30 minutes later and find that it has gone higher despite still not eating. People sometimes call this the feet on the floor effect. It is basically another part of the body's wake-up response. The moment we get up and start moving, the body may release more hormones and more stored glucose to help us begin the day. Again, your body is not trying to harm you. It is trying to give you energy. The problem is not necessarily that the liver releases glucose. The problem is that the glucose may remain in the blood for longer than it should. Now, the dawn phenomenon is not the only reason for a high morning reading. What you ate the evening before can still matter. A late meal that is high in sugar or starch may keep blood glucose elevated for several hours. For example, a large portion of bread, pasta, rice, potatoes, cereal, dessert, or takeaway food late at night may still be affecting your glucose while you sleep. Some people find that their blood sugar rises quickly after these foods. Others experience a slower rise that continues for several hours. Alcohol can also make overnight blood glucose patterns less predictable, particularly when it is combined with a carbohydrate-heavy meal. Sleep matters too. A poor night's sleep can increase stress hormones and temporarily reduce insulin sensitivity. So even if you eat exactly the same evening meal, your morning reading may be higher after a night of broken or very short sleep. Emotional stress can have a similar effect. When the body feels under pressure, it releases hormones such as cortisol and adrenaline. These hormones encourage the liver to release more glucose because the body thinks it may need extra energy to deal with a threat. That threat might not be physical. It could be work pressure, worry, pain, anxiety, or simply a very difficult week. Illness and infection can also raise blood glucose, sometimes before we even realise that we are becoming unwell. Certain medications, including steroids, may raise glucose too. So, a high morning reading should be viewed as a clue. It is information. It is not enough on its own to tell us exactly what caused it. This is why looking for a pattern is much more useful than reacting to one isolated number. Try recording your blood sugar at the same times for several days. You could check it before bed and then again immediately after waking. Depending on the advice you have been given and the type of monitoring you use, you may also find it helpful to look at what happens during the night. A continuous glucose monitor can make these patterns easier to see, but finger prick readings can still provide useful information. Also, record what you ate in the evening, when you finished eating, how well you slept, and whether you were feeling unusually stressed or unwell. After several days, you may start to see a pattern. Perhaps your morning blood sugar is noticeably higher after eating late. Perhaps it rises after a poor night's sleep. Or perhaps it rises at roughly the same time every morning, regardless of what you ate. That would make the dawn phenomenon a more likely explanation. So what can you actually do about it? First, try not to panic over a single high reading. Home glucose meters are useful, but readings naturally vary and one number does not tell the whole story. Second, take a look at your evening meal. You may find that reducing sugar and heavily limiting starchy or refined carbohydrates at dinner leads to a better morning result. Build the meal around a good source of protein, non-starchy vegetables, and minimally processed whole foods. You can also experiment with finishing your evening meal slightly earlier and avoiding constant snacking before bed. A short walk after dinner may help your muscles use some of the circulating glucose. Resistance activity can also improve insulin sensitivity over time, but avoid turning this into a frantic attempt to burn off every meal. The aim is to create a consistent routine that supports better glucose control. Sleep is another important piece of the puzzle. A regular sleep schedule, a dark bedroom, less late-night screen exposure, and managing stress before bed may all help. These steps are not glamorous, but they can make a real difference. Some people wonder whether they should eat breakfast immediately to stop the liver releasing glucose. Others find that delaying breakfast works better for them. The response can differ between individuals, and medication can make this more complicated. So it is better to monitor your own pattern rather than assume that one approach will suit everyone. And if you take insulin or medication that can cause low blood glucose, do not make major changes to meal timing, carbohydrate intake, or medication without speaking to your healthcare team. Persistently high morning readings may mean that your overall treatment plan needs reviewing. That might involve looking at your food, activity, sleep, medication timing, or medication dose. It is especially important to seek medical advice if your readings are repeatedly very high, rising rapidly, or accompanied by symptoms such as excessive thirst, frequent urination, sickness, abdominal pain, deep breathing, confusion, or severe tiredness. So, why is your blood sugar high in the morning? Often it is because your body is releasing stored glucose to help you wake up and begin the day. In someone with insulin resistance or diabetes, that extra glucose may not be cleared efficiently. Late eating, high carbohydrate meals, poor sleep, stress, illness and medication may also contribute. The key is not to blame yourself. Look for patterns, test consistently if you have been advised to monitor, and use the information to decide what may need changing. Your morning reading is not a moral judgment, it is simply feedback from your body. In our next video, we will explain insulin resistance, why it develops, and what can be done to improve it. Subscribe to Diabetes Food Truth for simple, practical guidance on blood sugar, pre-diabetes and type 2 diabetes. And let us know in the comments, is your blood sugar higher when you wake up than it was when you went to bed?